Jak and Daxter: The Percussor Legacy is a 3D adventure platformer developed by Naughty Dog and released for the Sony PlayStation 2 in December of 2001. It began development under the working title Project Y, with only 2 programmers being allocated to work on the game as the rest of the team was still working on Crash Team Racing. It wouldn't take long, however, for this new project to take priority as the team grew and the full potential for the game became more and more apparent. Now, I never played Jak and Daxter as a kid. Somehow I missed out on this series for a really long time, but I did end up playing a little bit of this specific one in my early 20s when going through a box of old PS2 games my roommate at the time brought back from his parents' house to play while we were revisiting some of our childhood titles. I think I got like an hour or 2 in before my attention got diverted, but I remembered having a pretty good time with it. A few years later, I ended up putting some hours into Jak 2 and really liking that one as well, but again, I got distracted by other things. Although I always wanted to go back and play the series proper. I mean, Jak and Daxter has a massive reputation for being one of the PS2's best franchises, and I've heard nothing but continuous praise for it anytime it's mentioned, with the first game being lauded as one of the greatest Collectathon games ever made. But given my limited experience with it, I always wondered, is Jak and Daxter really that good?
Hey baby, what do you say you and I go cruising on this A-Grav Zoomer?
Some of you guys might not realize this given the type of content I normally do on this channel, but I do actually love Collectathon platformers. So my interest in diving in and seeing what this game is all about has been growing more and more until finally I decided that it was time to dive in and see it all for myself. After playing through the whole game, I can readily tell you that yes, Jak and Daxter: The Percussor Legacy really is that good. In fact, it's one of the highest quality platformers I've ever played. The sheer polish and refinement on this game is outstanding. I'd even call it something of a masterclass on game design and how to fulfill the potential of a vision. What's crazy is that there's nothing particularly special or hyper unique about the Percussor Legacy. So far as gameplay mechanics, setting, or story, I feel like it'd be easy to write it off at a glance as just another PS2 platformer. The thing about this game though is that it does everything to the highest level of quality it possibly could have. There wasn't a single time I found myself thinking the game needed more time in the oven or additional polish. Even the final levels of the game are pristine and feel like they were designed with an intense consideration into every aspect of them. A lot of older games tend to suffer in the later levels where you can tell they started rushing the development, but not here. So far as my time with the game, everything about it was as good as it had any hope of being, but that's what makes Jak and Daxter so special. It really is just that good.
Nobody ever listens to old Samos.
What you're seeing here is footage of the PC port of the game. You guys know how much I love seeing these old games run at their peak potential, and thanks to the OpenGOAL project, you can now play a proper port of the Jak and Daxter games decompiled and running natively on your PC. Now, you will still need your own ROMs of the games, of course, but once you get the game up and running, it is so worth it. That isn't to say that the original PS2 version looked bad by any means. I played a chunk of that original iteration of the game too, and it still looked fantastic. Even a side-by-side comparison shows that the classic PS2 port still holds up really well, but there is a noticeable improvement in clarity and frame rate when running the PC decompilation port. The original author of the game's coding language even stated how impressed he was with the effort these fans put into this project, so as far as I can tell, this is all on the up and up. If Sony was smart, they'd pay these guys a sum of money for their work here and release this officially as a trilogy remaster. I mean, the work is already done. These guys did all 3 games. Just cut them a check and have one of your teams package it up and then release it.
Have you tried attacking him with your melodrama? Cause it's killing me!
Something that blew me away when I was playing it was that this game has no loading screens at all, ever. You can play through the whole thing start to finish and not see a single loading screen. I cannot emphasize how impressive that is for a game that came out in 2001. Not only that, they didn't even have to rely on fogging the distance to hide the lack of a loaded world. They just built the game's progression in such a way where everything could load in when it was needed without the player ever noticing it happen. There are multiple different areas for players to organically explore at their own pace, and each of them ranges from 3 to 6 million polygons at a time, which could often cause the team's applications to crash from not being able to handle it all. And it really paid off too, because look at how brilliant it all looks. This little world that Naughty Dog created is exploding with life, and it has aged remarkably well. The real star of the show, of course, are the animations. Naughty Dog have always been known for their extremely high quality animation work, and this game is no exception. If something in this game moves, then it moves smoothly and believably. According to game director Jason Rubin, the roughly 40 minutes of animations in the game required 6 full-time animators, 4 additional support animators, and in some cases, they even needed to hire out some animators from Disney and Nickelodeon to help. You can tell too because the quality of these animations is brilliant.
Yeah. That about sums it up.
It's not all about the animations though. A huge factor of why this game has aged so well visually is its creative cartoon-inspired art style. Every character is artistically distinct from one another and decorated in such exaggerative gear to hammer in those extra memorable qualities. There's only a handful of voiced characters that you'll be interacting with, but all of them are very unique with their own motivations and personalities, which is why their distinctive designs play such a role in communicating that fact to the player. Not to mention the world itself is bursting with creative enemies, objects, and environments to show the player the kind of new universe they're inhabiting. I particularly love our main ensemble's get-ups. Jak's outfit gives off this kind of plucky but capable vibe, and even the goggles on his head tie into this idea that all of these people are just surviving off the remnants of the ancient culture that came before them. Daxter is an animal now, but still wears his own goggles too, so he matches Jak. Kira has been brilliantly designed to look like she just walked off the set of a Fast and Furious movie, which fits well with her being a mechanic and a tinkerer. Even Samos pulls off the old quirky but wise sage outfit. So what's even going on in this crazy, colorful game? Spoilers ahead, by the way. Well, we the player take control of Jak, an adventurous young man tasked with saving the land that he and his friends call home from a rogue sage named Gaul and his sorceress sister Maya, who have become corrupted by a native energy source called Dark Eco. These two once served to protect the island's dark eco and learn about it so that they might better the lives of those on the island, but the corrupting properties of the dark eco twisted their minds until they formulated a plan to flood the world with it, destroying it and reshaping it to their own liking. To achieve this goal, Gaul and Maya enlisted the help of one of the races on the island called Lurkers. I don't think it's ever explicitly stated, but I'm pretty sure they've been corrupted by the dark eco as well. These Lurkers come in all kinds of different shapes and sizes, but are typically hostile to the human villagers that live on the island. As such, they will be our primary enemies of the game. Along for the ride is Jak's friend, Daxter, who was once a human like Jak before he got transformed into a small furry critter called an Otzel when he tripped and fell into a large vat of dark eco. Daxter also hopes that in the process of stopping Gaul and Maya's plan to flood the world with dark eco, that they can find a way to turn him back into a human. Since Jak is a mute and can't speak, his talkative friend Daxter handles all of the talking for him. There are multiple different types of eco, each with its own purpose, left over from the long-lost Percussor race. We've covered dark eco, of course, but there's also green eco, blue eco, red eco, yellow eco, and even light eco, which is the rarest form. These various energy sources are present all over the island and interact with Jak's DNA in different ways when he absorbs them. Green eco heals him by restoring the player's health. Blue eco energizes him, not only making him move faster, but also capable of charging up certain elements around the world for use. Yellow eco powers him up with the ability to throw fireballs at his enemies, and red supercharges his melee attacks to make him twice as strong. All of these power-ups only grant short temporary boosts, but are integral to the overall gameplay loop. They also each have a sage responsible for protecting their source, although they've all gone missing lately, and the only one seemingly left is Jak and Daxter's caretaker Samos, the green sage who acts as our mentor and primary quest giver for the duration of the game.
Whoa! I don't think I'll ever get used to that teleporter tingling sensation.
Another major help in Jak's journey is Samos' daughter, Kira. A talented mechanic and dedicated worker, Kira plays a pivotal role in helping our young heroes accomplish their mission. She is also sort of an implied love interest for Jak throughout the game. The main objective is to attain a series of precursor power cells, which are what the native inhabitants use to power their technology. There's only so many on the island, and acquiring them will mean pulling off a series of different feats from platforming to doing favors for certain locals, and sometimes just outright buying them with their local currency. Once they fight their way across the island and reach Gaul's citadel, the missing red, yellow, and blue sages are found being held captive by Gaul and Maya, along with their mentor Samos the Green Sage, who was kidnapped while Jak and Daxter were collecting power cells. So the two overcome a series of intense challenges to free each of the sages, who work together to try and delay Gaul and Maya from reactivating an ancient precursor robot, which eventually of course they still manage to do, which means Jak and Daxter must take on the mechanical terror themselves. After enough damage is done to the machine, the sages work together and cause all of the various eco-energy sources to fire into each other and create light eco. Daxter considers if that could be the key to turning him human again before resolving that stopping Gaul and Maya is more important than him.
Stay fuzzy, save the world. Choices. Okay, fine. We'll save the world, but do it quickly before I change my mind.
And so Jak absorbs the light eco and acquires an immense amount of power, allowing him to destroy the robot as Gaul and Maya sink into a vat of dark eco stored within the tower they were fighting on. The sages comment on Jak's incredible talent for channeling eco and Kira's ingenuity being crucial to the mission's success before Samos expresses some uncertainty as to the final fate of Gaul and Maya. It's all pretty much what you'd expect from a story in a game like this, and I kinda thought that's what made it great.
Wow! Put it on ice, big guy!
It was just a really fun and fitting story designed to elevate the experience rather than overshadow or subvert it. The key to said experience, however, comes from the gameplay. Like we've covered, Jak and Daxter is a collectathon action platformer, and that's what you'll be doing the whole time here. We already talked about how your primary goal is to get as many power cells as you can via various activities and challenges, but the other two items you'll be looking for are the Precursor Orbs and Scout Flies. Precursor Orbs are a series of ancient egg-shaped items left over from the so-called precursors that humanity now simply uses as a currency to fuel their economy. They're very prevalent though, and you'll probably have as many as you need if you just grab every one of them that you can see. In total, we're talking 2,000 orbs across the game, which is more than you'll need unless you're going for a 100% completion run. They are pretty satisfying to collect too. The floating and spinning animation makes attaining them very appealing.
Keep collecting power cells. They're the key to continuing our journey north.
As for the Scout Flies, they're quite a bit less abundant, with 7 of them being spread across each of the game's areas, totaling out to 112 altogether. The Scout Flies are hidden in these red boxes that you need to dive attack to break open and collect. Every time you manage to get all 7 in a single area, you'll be rewarded with a power cell. The other boxes you see everywhere are filled with green eco, which can be absorbed once broken to refill Jak's health, making their placement around the map a crucial aspect of the game's level design. If your health depletes, however, you'll be treated to a fun game over screen where Daxter leans over your body and says a line of dialogue acknowledging that you perished.
Step 1, stay alive. Step 2, think about not doing something like that again!
Given that platforming is one of the key elements of this game's overall offering, you'll be doing a lot of it, so it's very good to say that it feels great. It's challenging in places, of course, and you'll need to get used to how Jak feels to control, but I don't think there was a single instance of me falling to my death or failing to reach an area that I could blame on the game in any way. Everything felt fair and totally dialed in, with a slow and steady escalation of the difficulty as you progress. As for the combat, it's similarly polished, although plays a significantly smaller role in the game overall. That's not to say you won't be doing any fighting or throwing any hands, because you definitely will. There's hundreds of lurkers and other beasts all gunning for your head, and you'll need to be fast to take them out before they send you to a Daxter game over screen.
That looks like it hurt. Should I call for backup?
Jak has 2 main moves he can use, one being a simple punch that thrusts him forward to deliver a powerful damaging blow, and a spin move similar to that of Naughty Dog's previous game, Crash Bandicoot. Then he has a few additional moves to utilize, like an aerial uppercut or a jumping dive. Although that spin move is pretty OP, you can pretty much just lean on that for most of the game if you really wanted to. In addition to everything we've talked about already, the game also features its very own vehicle sections, and they're honestly pretty fun. The main vehicle you'll be using is the A-Grav Zoomer, which I would assume is short for anti-gravity. It's really just a motorcycle hovercraft, but no less fun to play with and drive around. Not only is this the main vehicle Jak uses to cross through these transitional areas from hub to hub, but there's also an entire area made for players to just drive around on it and have fun. It interacts with Eco as well, making it faster in some cases, or giving it a special ability to complete certain minor challenges like killing off these weeds here or shooting fireballs. It's a little strange to control though, but not in a bad way at all. It's very weighty and heavy and a little difficult to get used to, but I really like it. I looked forward to every chance I got to play with it. There's the other vehicle too. Well, a vehicle in function, but actually these little guys are called Flut-Fluts and can be ridden around like a Tauntaun from Star Wars. They're less common in the game than the Zoomer, but the fact that they can leap great distances makes them a fantastic addition for a bit of platforming. The whole flow of everything across this world is really rewarding, and there's so many different biomes and so much visual diversity across the different areas that I almost couldn't believe how much content is stuffed into this game as I was playing it. Did I mention the real-time day and night cycle? Yeah, I'm not sure exactly how long a day is here. I'm pretty sure it takes about 10 minutes to get from sunrise to sunset, and then 10 more minutes to get from sunset back to sunrise again, so it's about a 20-minute day cycle, I think. The fact that the lighting is organic and advanced enough to carry through every cycle of a day, including dawn and dusk, is not only so immersive and impressive, but also makes for some incredible visuals throughout your gameplay. The presence of this mechanic does seem to vary though, as some areas feel permanently dark, like the boggy swamp. The full island is split up into 12 unique areas spread across 3 hub areas according to the colored sage who presides over that region. If you count the Geyser Rock tutorial area, that makes 13, but you'll really only see it once at the start, despite the fact that you can technically return to it whenever you want. Out of these 12 areas, 3 of them are shorter transitional vehicle sections that take you between both the hubs and the final level, which leaves 9 explorable areas to explore within the typical gameplay loop. Every area has a variety of different little tasks you can complete, from catching a critter and returning it to its master to defeating a series of specific lurker enemies. That said, most of these areas have a single major task to accomplish that it's all kind of built around. I'll briefly give an overview of each area here since they're all just so cool. The first hub area is called Sandover Village and is under the watch of Samos, the Green Sage. Within this hub are the first 3 gameplay areas, 2 of which you can access in any order you want. Depending on how the player wants to go about it, you can either make your way into the Sentinel Beach or the Forbidden Jungle, but I'd be willing to bet most players wind up at the Sentinel Beach first, just due to the level design seemingly ushering you in that direction. Which is honestly probably for the best, since I'd call this a brilliant starter level to further familiarize the player with how the game plays while showing off the game's various offerings in a controlled and beginner-friendly setting. It also sets a really strong aesthetic tone with its mix of the more primitive local buildings seeming to be the most notable landmarks, but the ancient precursor robots buried into the cliffside, reminding us that there is something far more advanced hidden in the secrets of the precursors. The main thing we need to do here is free up these green eco harvesters as they've been clogged up with something. We can also see our third hub area in the distance that we can't access yet, but that I'm getting to. First, we'll need to make our way into the second area called Forbidden Jungle.
Yeah, that sounds like a good start.
In my opinion, Forbidden Jungle is a little bit more challenging to navigate than Sentinel Beach, making it better to seek it out after. The main thing we need to do here is align these towers to restore power to the island, which will take us all over the area in the process. The look of the area is different too, being less wide open than the beach and instead feeling densely packed with flora and fauna, much of which actively wants to harm you. Although the rickety old bridges further the feeling of a primitivist aesthetic, the enormous precursor building with its giant spinning mechanism floating above it once again reminds us of the ancient sci-fi undertones of this game's look and feel. We can even go inside of that thing and fight our first boss, a massive overgrown plant thing. All of the boss battles in this game are pretty easy, but they're also so creative and visually gratifying to face off against. In the Forbidden Jungle, we can help a fisherman in a fish-catching minigame that literally only ever shows up this one time, and he gives us the keys to his boat, which we can then use to visit the third and final area of this first hub. Returning to the village, we can hop on the fisherman's boat and make our way to Misty Island. Again, the journey from the mainland to this little island is seamless and happens without a loading screen.
Look, old man, are you gonna keep yapping, or are you gonna help me out of this mess?
You may recognize this as the location from the very start of the game where Daxter fell into a vat of dark eco and was turned into the Ottsel that he now is. We get a cool area dedicated to using the zoomer here, which I really enjoyed, and leads us up to this big cannon the lurkers are using to try and break open this dark eco silo so Maya and Gaul can exploit its power. It's easily the hardest of the three areas in Sandover Village, but the fact that it takes place off of the main land and we can even see the main hub out in the distance makes it feel especially unique when compared to other areas. Although players can technically skip Misty Island and move on to the second hub without having to come here, they'll probably end up needing to come back later before they can access the final area. Speaking of moving on to the second hub, the player will need to hop on their Agrav zoomer and fly through the hub transition area called Fire Canyon. All of these transitional areas are basically just little straight shot courses, but they're still plenty of fun nevertheless. Each one of them contains 7 scout flies, which means we can grab a precursor orb in them.
Hey! It looks like the Blue Sage threw a party.
Oh my! Rock Village is on fire!
One heck of a party.
On the other side of Fire Canyon is our second hub area, Rock Village, which is an appropriate name since it's built around these giant rock structures. This is supposed to be under the Blue Sage's domain, but he and the other sages have all gone missing, and his hut has even been torn apart. The way further north to the third hub is being blocked by a giant lurker, and we'll need to collect enough power cells here in the various areas of Rock Village for Kira to use a leftover machine to lift this massive boulder out of the way.
It's not just a boulder, it's a rock.
From Rock Village, we can access 3 different unique areas, and I started with the Boggy Swamp. I'm not sure if you're expected to start with this one, but I did anyway, and out of every area in the game, I kind of found this one to be the most frustrating for some reason. The way it's laid out is lacking in the same verticality of other areas, but even the worst moments of this game are still brilliantly fun and leagues above the average. The goal here in the Boggy Swamp is to find the tethers holding that Zeppelin in the air, destroy them, and get that thing out of here. After this, I moved on to the Lost Precursor City, which, opposite to the last area, this one was one of my favorites of the game. Samos read in the Blue Sage's notes that they were attempting to get through the ancient city to a chamber deep within and raise it to the surface, but no one had managed to do so yet. So, Jak and Daxter head inside and brave the various dangers and challenges inside of the city, of which there are many.
Wait! I'll stay here and protect Kira. Jak, I think you're ready to handle that monster without me.
Oh, really heroic of you.
The design of this level leans into the tech prowess of the precursors so much that it can make you forget sometimes how much the rest of the game leans into the primitivism look. There's a few fun surprises in this one that I won't spoil, but it's worth seeing for yourself. The third and final area of Rock Village is the Precursor Basin.
All right, my boy. You know what to do. Take the flea bag and go round up more power cells.
I already talked earlier about how we have to use our zoomer to distribute green eco over these dark eco-infected plants in this area, which is the main thing we're sent here to do. But in addition to that, we can chase these moles into their holes to keep them safe and even complete a racetrack. You'll be through this part of the game pretty quick, I think, but it's still cool that there's an entire area dedicated to just riding around on your zoomer. Once all is said and done, Kira can activate the levitation machine with the power cells and lift up the boulder. At the end of this path is a giant lurker named Claw, and we'll have to take him on in a boss battle. I mean, it's a pretty standard fare boss battle for a platformer and works really well for what it is. We have to dodge some attacks, wait for him to grab a giant rock, and throw a series of fireballs at him until he drops it on himself, then rinse and repeat a few times until he gives up. With Claw out of the way, we hop on our zoomer and blast through the mountain pass, which takes us from Rock Village to our third hub. The player has to chase these flying lurkers and beat them to the end of the canyon, or they'll detonate a massive dynamite charge and block off access to the third hub. Unlike the first transitional vehicle section, there's more to this one than just a lot of lava. We'll pass through lush, grassy hillsides and glowing crystal caves before grabbing the detonator and moving into the Volcanic Crater, which is the name of the third and smallest hub. Whereas a lot of the other areas are connected directly into their respective hubs, the Volcanic Crater hub is based inside of a mountain where the Red Sage's hut is suspended just above a river of lava.
Oh, don't look so upset, Samos. We've got big plans for you.
There's not quite as much exploration or as many characters to interact with in this hub, but to make up for the reduced size of the hub, the two playable areas we get to visit are enormous. Like how this gondola takes us seamlessly from the molten inside of this mountain all the way up the side of the mountain to the very top where we find a snow-laden environment awaiting us. This is another of my favorite areas from the game given how eclectic and unique so many of the things here are. I mean, you have to deal with the fact that Jak slides around on the ice, which makes it a new challenge to navigate handling it when it happens. Not to mention the glacial troops we're here to stop as they attempt to dislodge a series of dark eco canisters from the side of the mountain. Then there's an entire walled-in fort of the lurkers we have to infiltrate and clean out, and even some really interesting platforming areas to overcome.
Don't worry about me, baby. You know what they say. Big things come in small packages.
You guys don't know just how impressive this was for a PS2 game in 2001. Then, heading back down to the hub, the player pushes even deeper into the mountain's depths into Spider Cave, which is exactly what it sounds like, a cave littered in spiders among other dangerous creepy crawly fauna. There's also entire rivers flowing with pure dark eco that you're going to want to watch out for. Much like Snowy Mountain, this area is quite a bit bigger than a lot of the earlier ones, so you're going to want to pay close attention to where you're going to minimize the amount of times you get straight up lost. The primary goal of coming down here was to find and destroy a series of dark eco crystals, which is harder than you might think at first because a few of these are hidden in really hard to find places. I was down here for a while. There's also a lot of digging and construction going on, which we can go in and put a stop to by clearing out these dig sites. Some of the game's most interesting platforming bits are down here too. It's a serious highlight. With all of the areas complete and all of the power cells we needed gathered, Jak and Daxter can make their way down into the lava tube, the final vehicle section to take us from the last hub into the final area of the game.
You've got to rescue my father before it's too late. And Jak, be careful.
Yeah, we will be.
In order to proceed through the lava tube, the player will need to have accumulated at least 72 power cells, but if you are playing each area appropriately, you should have them ready by the time you need to move on to this part. It's a bit harder than the previous transitional sections have been, and demands the player incorporate everything they've learned about how to play the game into navigating through this underground lava tunnel, but about halfway through is when you can see a serious shift in the look of everything. The final location of the game is called Gall and Maya's Citadel, but it was built on top of what used to be the Yellow Sage's hut, and you can see all of the intense mechanical additions Gall and Maya have been making to everything here, which results in a really cool blend of haphazard post-apocalyptic futurism aesthetic. It's hard to explain. Upon arriving to what used to be the Yellow Sage's hut, Jak is able to turn the teleporter on and let Kira join back up with us.
Relax, sweetheart. I got everything under control.
Under control? Lurker armies continue to grow across the land. The sages have been kidnapped. Gall and Maya have gathered enough eco to complete their terrible plan, and to stop them, you're going to have to fight your way through their citadel.
This final area is built around this ancient precursor robot that Gall and Maya have heavily modified and are attempting to bring online as they siphon the energy from the 4 different sages to power it. Pretty much the whole thing here is an assortment of the most challenging platforming obstacles we've seen yet, standing between us and freeing each of the sages. I'm serious about the difficulty of some of these, man. There's a pretty intense difficulty spike between the last areas and this one. It almost tricks you into thinking this location is bigger than it actually is because you'll need to replay certain parts over and over again so many times. Or at least I did. The futuristic technology of the precursors is on full display now, to the point where it almost looks like a completely different game. But once you overcome the obstacles of this last level, you'll move on into the final boss battle that we talked about earlier. and that's every area of the game. Once you beat it, you're teased with a hidden ending for those dedicated enough to gather all 100, technically 101, power cells across the game to discover, but it's really not worth it, and the player isn't shown very much beyond a white glow from a teleporter they activate using the power cells.
Wow! What is it?
It's so beautiful.
By the precursors.
To score these incredible and creative areas is an enormous soundtrack composed by Josh Mansell that features a percussion-heavy series of tracks, each tailored for whatever the player is seeing on screen. I seriously can't believe how many different tracks and track variations there were for a game that winds up being no more than a 6 to 8 hour affair at most. Each area has slightly altered versions that fade in and out depending on what part of the map you're in at any given time. Like there's a track for the Forbidden Jungle, for instance, and a different version of the track with slightly different instruments and maybe a different melody added in or removed just for being near a certain character or object in the world. I mean, just have a look at how many versions of the Rock Village theme you'll encounter depending on where you are or who you're talking to. And they blend in so seamlessly that I didn't even realize it was happening until I looked at the track list of the OST after playing and connected the dots. When you're in game, it's all so seamless that you won't even notice when it happens. It's all really high quality and very well produced, but I don't think any of the tracks were discernibly stand out or even overtly iconic though. Sometimes too many unique tracks can rob a project of a reoccurring iconic leitmotif, and I kind of feel like that's what's going on here. There is a kind of main theme melody that plays in the main menu on a bass guitar, but the whole thing is just a pinch too low-key. I do feel like it's fitting for how the game presents itself in the earlier areas, but doesn't keep up with how intense the journey becomes throughout the game.
I'm Daxter. He's Jack. He's with me.
Good job, Daxter. You're a real hero.
The whole game is incredible even. Jak and Daxter the Percussor Legacy is legitimately one of the best PS2 games I've ever played. Games this good used to spoil us back then, I think, because we would get something like Jak and Daxter as a kid and not have much of a concept as to how insanely dialed in this game actually was. It would give us an unrealistic expectation of what a decent video game should look like, because the honest truth is that most video games simply do not measure up to this in terms of fulfilling their maximum amount of potential. It looks great, it plays great, it sounds great, it really is just great. The plot may be simple, but it manages to use its own simplicity as a strength to tie the experience together without feeling overbearing. The characters are all fun and unique, and the whole world feels meticulously cultivated with a great deal of passion and care. Even the weirdly unique visual aesthetic feels like it actually shouldn't work, but somehow does. I mean, on paper, primitivist sci-fi seems like it'd be pretty hard to pull off in a sincere way, but it was just executed so well here that they did. I'm really glad I decided to sit down, play through this game, and really see what it was all about, because it was honestly such a good time, and after really experiencing what it had to offer for the first time, I can happily say that Jak and Daxter the Percussor Legacy really was that good.